Hello, hello. We are live with the Lombard Lounge, episode 7, lucky for some. And today, joined by myself, Charlotte, Matt Marshall, Matt Donovan, and Jacob Phillips. And today is a really exciting episode because hopefully you've already seen this very bright green that's all around. So yesterday we shared our brand refresh, keeping the logo, but introducing this lovely green color and some photography that I'll get onto a little bit later. But the main event was sharing our long-term multi-cycle roadmap to build the full stack infrastructure to bring Bitcoin capital markets on chain, and its full and Bitcoin's full potential as well. So if you've read the article, you've already had a little bit of a briefing on what that means, but thought very important to hear from the people behind that vision and the people that will be executing against it for many, many years to come. We had a really exciting day on Twitter yesterday and have been getting some great feedback on the brand, and also lots of comments, which we'll get to, comments and questions, which we'll get to at the end. So if you have comments, questions, or any feedback, then definitely do just drop them on the Twitter thread behind this, underneath the video, and we will try and answer them at the end. So if you all just around this room here want to say hello, who you are and what you do at Lombard, and maybe your favorite part of the roadmap or your favorite part of the new brand. Jacob, you go first.
Okay, sweet. Hey everyone, Jacob Phillips, one of the co-founders of Lombard. I don't write code. I sort of help out with a lot of other things. I had the privilege of working really closely with Charlotte and Kirthi on the rebrand and sort of repositioning. And my personal favorite part about the brand is the new green. I just love it. It feels very electric. It feels high energy. It seems to embody everything that Lombard is. We kept the same logo, which I love. And now, like at the very end of one of those videos, you kind of see the Lombard logo build up from nothing. That I think really hits for me. I'm sure there's more substantial parts of the brand I probably should have said are my favorite, but that's what I like. I'll pass it over to one of the Matts. Maybe Mr. Mark.
Okay, sure. So my name's Matt. Thanks for joining us, everyone. I'm head of product at Lombard. Jacob definitely picked the easy answer there and the lowest hanging fruit. For me, I think it's the logo, right? So it is the same logo we had before, but really it just shows our iterative next step building upon the strong, solid foundations that we have to date. So still infinite possibilities with Bitcoin, showing the cyclical nature of markets, and really evolving to build on top of solid foundations.
Cool. Well, maybe I'll take this one. So Matt Marshall joined before myself, so I kind of go by Dono within Lombard and just generally across the space. I lead BD at Lombard, so the obvious answer here is this vision and getting it very public very clearly shows how we're going to work with everyone, right? Obviously, we're going to build off all of the prowess and all the great go-to-market strength that we've already built out. But if you think about it, in a world where everyone has that Bitcoin strategy, whether it's a chain, a protocol, a wallet, an exchange, or even more traditional players moving into this space on the fintech and institutional side, this very clearly shows how we're going to start to build new products and service their customers and their needs. Obviously, nothing changes as it relates to providing really good, strong support for our current customer base, and we're always going to build with those in mind. But it really just opens the scope as far as who we can work with, and fundamentally what types of products we can build. So really looking forward to all this.
Really awesome. Yeah, I also see it as an evolution. I think as a marketing person, everyone always expects marketing people to want to come in, change the brand every 6 months to a year, because it is a really, really fun process. But what we realized is we didn't need to rebrand, because we were doing a lot of things very well, and people knew us to be this very fresh, trusted, professional brand. We just needed to evolve it to cater to all of the products and all of the different products that ultimately will be launching and rolling out over the course of the next couple of years. The brand that we had wasn't big enough robust enough to do that. And I think now we've got this green. We have another awesome palette of colors. We have lots of graphical elements. I'm now really excited to work with Kirthi and the broader team to bring these new products to market, each with a very distinct personality and style, but inherently Lombard. So I'm very excited to work with brand to roll out the products that were mentioned in the roadmap yesterday. So Jacob's on the move, but maybe I was wanting to sort of throw to him. I think what we want to do is maybe go through that article just because it's a really good resource here and talk through some of the key bits, ultimately where we've been and where we're going. But maybe Jacob, as you begin presenting the article to people, maybe you can just double click into what we mean when we say full stack infrastructure, and also what we mean when we say enabling Bitcoin capital markets, because these are big claims, big words, and it'd be awesome if you could just break them down for people, and then we can roll into that article.
Perfect. All right. I've been told I'm a bit of a verbose speaker, so I'm sure this will be evident of that, but I'll try to keep it concise and then we can dive into different parts as we see fit. One thing I wanted to touch on with regard to the brand sort of repositioning happening here, and now that Matt commented on the simplicity of my first answer, is that when I think back to when we first did our original Lombard branding exercise at the very beginning of the project, Charlotte, we came up with all of these ideas, like unlocking Bitcoin's full potential, for example, was core to our original brand. And then what we've realized is like that has then become the standard for the entire industry. Now everybody is saying that exact same language. Every time we came up with a narrative, somebody else sort of, I think everybody, in Bitcoin DeFi sort of latched onto this, which, to us was the biggest compliment. I think we had our website copied, we've had our docs copied, certainly have had all of our narrative copied. And so at this point in time, like we found ourselves sort of gravitating to what we viewed as like the next evolution of those narratives. When we were thinking through some of this language, we very much were trying to stay away from words that we felt were like kind of already commandeered by the ecosystem, trying to push forward to something new. So even though, we still think that like everything that we were, trying to do, or like everything that we said we were trying to do from the beginning of like unlocking Bitcoin's full potential is still the truth, but now we're sort of just reinvigorating it a little bit, and the website, now you see this idea of like bringing Bitcoin to life, which I think is almost like the next evolution on that narrative. It's like, we're not just going, we started to unlock Bitcoin's full potential. It started to do more stuff. Now the name of the game is like, how can we liven it up? How can we, transition activity into more fundamental utility and into the Bitcoin economy? Anyway, so the idea here was that when we first started Lombard, this is just at a very high level. When we first started Lombard, we built out all of this infrastructure for this killer product, LBTC. And then we basically realized that there were so many different pieces of the stack that could live as standalone products. Or we had built things for LBTC that actually served other types of use cases much better. And we'll dive into that. But that I think is most exciting, was like, we sort of accidentally built this full stack and are now, turning it into something much more dynamic than before. So this is the post we put out, and it sort of walks through the full logic for like how we derived this vision. Bitcoin is the most important asset of our generation. It started everything. Everybody sort of onboards into crypto because of Bitcoin. The fundamental technology underlying all blockchains, all sort of permissionless infrastructure that we built dates back to, the original instantiation of the Bitcoin code base. And it really is just this incredibly powerful, tool for financial freedom that we believe is so incredibly important to the long-term success. And so, and in tandem, kind of in parallel, you've seen this pickup in on-chain finance. So you have like stablecoins are huge. I think DEX volume is now up to like 30 or 40% of centralized exchange volume or something like that, which is kind of insane. You have like, the RWA movement and every asset sort of coming on chain. And then now all of TradFi is trying to find a way to get into the on-chain game. It's very clear that on-chain is the future on-chain finance is the future of finance. And yet Bitcoin sits, this is the paradox. Bitcoin, which started it all, sort of defined all of the technology, has kind of been left out of the fun. I mean, even in I think about my personal progression, I was into Bitcoin first, and then got excited about on-chain finance, sort of totally forgot about Bitcoin all of DeFi summer because it was kind of irrelevant. All the cool stuff, all the innovation was happening in other ecosystems that were more programmable and expressive. Our goal is to flip the switch. Bitcoin was it is the foundation for the technology, the foundation for the ideals. It is perhaps the only sort of hard money that is, set to replace the sort of fundamental foundation for value that used to be gold. All original banks were built on sort of this gold standard. Like Bitcoin is the closest thing to replacing that in modern finance, and really is like, Bitcoin is so many things. It's a technological revolution, but it really is like a social revolution in how we think about what money is in the context of like geopolitics. Is it government run, or is it this like thing for the people by the people? Bitcoin is such a powerful primitive, and to have this at the center of this brand new financial ecosystem we built, I think is absolutely vital. I think we all sort of feel this, but it's something that needs to come to the forefront. It would be a little bit weird if we developed this whole on-chain financial ecosystem and Bitcoin wasn't at the center of it, because nothing comes close to this in terms of, the hardness of money. So, Bitcoin should be at the center of on-chain finance. Lombard is sort of making it happen. We started off with this very unified product, LBTC, a liquid staking token. It was a killer product. It was so easy to pitch to users. Users had a lot of Bitcoin on the back burner. They had explored on-chain finance in a number of other contexts, whether it be through like staking ETH or Solana, or they had at least seen what had happened when DeFi came to the forefront, DeFi summer last cycle, but we're still kind of on the sidelines, not participating. They needed this degree of persuasion to actually bring them on chain. And LBTC, the first and most prominent Bitcoin liquid staking token, was the thing to do that. But then, as I mentioned, we built this whole stack for LBTC, what we're now calling the Lombard stack. We built base layer security primitives in the Lombard consortium and the Lombard ledger, a BFT blockchain. We built LBTC, this like liquidity layer. To distribute the liquidity layer, we built an SDK that allows for native Bitcoin deposits and yield generation directly into any chain or application. And then we built this sort of we built these vaults and a whole sort of marketplace within the native Lombard application designed at distributing Bitcoin throughout DeFi. So all of these things originally we sort of tightly packaged into one, and we were really just building them in service of one very narrow product, which was LBTC. And now we've realized that there are a number of different ways that we could serve these products. I think as Matt Donovan outlined, to different types of clients. Lombard Ledger and the Lombard Consortium could serve different use cases. The SDK can, be a developer primitive for not just LBTC, but a Bitcoin wrapper that we're building and potentially other forms of Bitcoin. And then, this Bitcoin marketplace and these different structured products that we've been thinking about building for quite some time now sort of find a way into this different stack. So, on a broad basis, the way I think about it is Lombard is here to solve problems for Bitcoin holders. We are doing this at any layer of the stack, whether it be base layer, this middleware section that we're sort of focused on right now, or what's kind of been the MO for Lombard since the beginning, which has been distribution. I sort of haven't said Bitcoin capital markets yet, which is surprising, but Bitcoin capital markets is how we describe this next phase in Lombard. Lombard is building sort of this the liquidity layer effectively for Bitcoin, and the biggest thing that's missing, I think, from Bitcoin DeFi right now is that we have seen the activation of capital, right? You see Lombard, LBTC down here in the corner. We have made Bitcoin active within DeFi for the first time ever. But in order to get to the end state that we think is like the biggest opportunity, which is permissionless innovation on top of Bitcoin, there's this middle section that everybody forgets about, which is like you need to hyperscale liquidity to the point where building on Bitcoin is actually worthwhile. Everybody, I think the people have either started at the activation stage or they've started the innovation stage. Almost nobody has like really attacked the capital market stage. And this is going to be our full focus for the next, 12 months or something like that. With the idea being that building up very liquid on-chain markets for Bitcoin is a prerequisite to enabling the on-chain innovation that we ultimately hope to create. Our goal is to create a Bitcoin economy, but in order to do that, you need to have really liquid markets for Bitcoin on-chain. I really like this sort of the way this starts off of capital markets are the engines of economic progress. To create the economic progress, you need to first create the liquid markets. So yeah, this is the name of the game here. We activate liquidity, we hyperscale liquidity, and then from that, we can then think about building a whole economy on top of this. Without the liquidity, you can't build the economy. I think that's the main thing here.
And
yeah,
Jacob,
go ahead.
Just to chime in with one important point, and I know we talk about it a lot. It's one that really people need to fully realize that the environment for Bitcoin and maybe crypto and digital assets broadly has literally never been better in its 15-year history.
Yeah.
Right? Bitcoin currently at a $2.3 trillion market cap. There continues to be massive progress from a regulatory standpoint globally. This week in the US, right, being particularly a massive tailwind with the Clarity Act and Genius Act. Bitcoin ETFs have been the fastest growing ETFs of all time. You have banks and traditional institutions like Standard Chartered listing Bitcoin and a few other assets as spot trading. And on top of all of this, right, you have the Fed announcing that they're going to cut rates, right, which is all going to be such a massive flywheel and catalyst into an asset like Bitcoin. And so, everything that we're discussing here in this overall vision, it's not going to be accomplished over, 1, 2, 3 quarters or even, 1 to 2 years. This is going to be a long haul. And one other thing to highlight here is we're going to do it with the best partners possible, right? Whether that's from an infrastructure standpoint, from a vault perspective, from an institutional standpoint, on the custody side. This is going to be a massive journey, and we're only going to be as strong as our best partners. And so I think as it relates to continuing to execute and build this vision out, just very clearly highlighting that we understand it's a long journey, but given the progress that we've made to date, I think it sets us up, and the infrastructure we've built already along that way really does set us up to execute on what is a lofty vision. But yeah, very excited to continue to go head down and start to make some announcements where this can start to be realized. And the vision will be more clear, not just to us, but everyone who's going to now flood, different types of capital into this asset, Bitcoin.
100%. Timing. What a great segue with your discussion around timing. And I will try to whip through this to wrap this up so that I'm not the only one speaking here. Timing is been the name of the game for Lombard since the beginning. We built LBTC at the perfect time, and that's why Lombard went 0 to $1 billion in 92 days. I think the fastest any yield-bearing token has ever done this. LBTC totally changed the game for DeFi in this activate liquidity stage. For the first time ever, you saw major DeFi protocols integrating Bitcoin. It was like nobody ever really cared about Bitcoin and DeFi until Lombard came in and could onboard, couple $100 million of liquidity to a chain or a DeFi protocol in a matter of weeks. That really changed the game. This put Bitcoin DeFi on the map, so to speak. And so after we've activated liquidity, now we're thinking about this second phase, which this is where we're sort of focused on at the moment. Activate liquidity still comes back into this game. I think it's not so much that this is directly one after the other, and then we're not doing this anymore. I think it's more like this is a repeated sort of process where we are always looking to onboard liquidity in different ways. We'll continue to spin up different products aimed at distribution, but LBTC was the sort of killer product for us in this section. So now this kind of becomes our focus. Middleware is sort of a new concept for Bitcoin DeFi, but I think it perfectly summarizes what we are. A lot of people ask me if Lombard is a Bitcoin L2 or if we're competing in that space. And the honest truth is when I look out at what user demand is asking for, everybody wants Bitcoin and DeFi, but they want it in the best applications. They want it on Aave. They want it on Drift on Solana. They want to use it in Hyperliquid. This is where we see the bulk of the demand. And because of that, we built all of this infrastructure to be the bridge, both literally and metaphorically, to those ecosystems so that any killer application or any killer builder, regardless of where they are, whatever chain they're on, can access Bitcoin liquidity. So, and all of these products are sort of focused on that suite. Honestly, I think it might be better, to hand over pass the baton to Matt Marshall to talk through a little bit more of the product suite in this particular category in depth. But maybe I'll just touch on, after we sort of nail the middleware, section, this is like, once liquidity is scaled, then I think we move into a situation where you can start to think about building out, trustless and isolated Bitcoin ecosystems in the third phase of the developer economy. We sort of leave this intentionally a little bit broad right now, because I think it's the next phase that we will sort of figure out with time. Maybe just to touch on this last thing, and then I'll open the floor. Lombard, when we think about Lombard as a business, or as like a company, like what are we really about, or as a community, I should say, we have made the decision. We've had a lot of discussion of like, should we go into other assets, or should we broaden the bridge? And the answer is no. Like, Lombard is going all in on Bitcoin intentionally. We look at what happened in the stablecoin space. You see, Tether and Circle, who for the longest time people looked at as like bad businesses, just sort of these like really boring, boring people, like boring projects focused on a very narrow subset. And now you see what a killer use case stablecoins have come within DeFi. And now Tether and Circle are two of the most powerful businesses in all of this space. And we believe the same thing is going to happen with Bitcoin, where the winners of the Bitcoin liquidity layer are going to have immense power at multiple layers of the stack to influence the ecosystem, to set the standards, to really be the leaders of growth. And so our goal here is to, not only build foundational technology. Of course, we're going to build great tech, but even more so, there's something like a higher layer up the stack at like the social level, within the ecosystem, where we are going to be the leaders of Bitcoin DeFi in every sense. I think we have been so far, and we're going to continue to do this. I mean, this is one of the things that we think is most powerful of everything that we built with Lombard so far, is the Lombard brand, this sort of security first institutional brand for Bitcoin, that really has positioned us as one of the only major players able to step in and attack a lot of these opportunities that we're going after. So when we think of ourselves, we sort of think of ourselves a little bit more as like the Circle or Tether for Bitcoin than we do, sort of Bitcoin liquid staking token, or a very like deep DeFi project. We really are trying to, straddle the on-chain and institutional space, and trying to be that bridge for the whole ecosystem. I think that's probably, I really like this at the end. Bitcoin created the on-chain revolution. Now it's time for Bitcoin to lead it. So it really is, obviously, we think of this as an opportunity to push the entire Bitcoin space forward. And there have been many who have tried to do this. I think Lombard has been the first to have success with the launch of LBTC, and we are doubling, if not tripling down on our focus in this category. Matt, I think the one place I didn't do a great job of on this, and maybe I can stop sharing my screen, Charlotte, but I think it'd be good to talk a little bit more in depth about like how the product suite is coming together.
Sounds good. Yeah, that's fantastic. I think obviously there's only two assets that matter, right? Bitcoin and a means of payment, which happens to be a stable coin dollar. Picking your example from Circle and Tether is I think those are organizations which are undervalued. They've been around for quite a while. We've seen lots of stable coins come and go. But when we think about how widespread their assets are on lots of different ecosystems, the snowball effect, the exponential effect on liquidity has been huge and isn't always appreciated. And that's exactly what we're trying to do with Bitcoin. And as we have seen over the past year, we've built a lot of products and platforms that we haven't always pushed out the door to realize their full potential, and that's what we're starting to do now. So we started with LBTC as a yield-bearing asset with a catalyst for bringing BTC on chain. That's had powerful unlocks throughout DeFi, being deployed on over 12 blockchains. At the same time, one of the key tricks was really around user acquisition of how we simplify BTC being deposited into the Lombard protocol from any exchange, any wallets, without having to know about underlying technology, or being maybe a little bit confused or worried that you may make a mistake as a user in bridging. We've simplified that. Users don't have to know about underlying Bitcoin versions of Taproot versus SegWit addresses. And that's been a powerful unlock. We found very early on that a lot of acquisition was from native Bitcoin, not from secondary market activity from other BTC correlated derivatives. And that net new liquidity coming on chain has always been a powerful message for us. And that's why we're pushing it not just via our own Lombard dApp, but also through an SDK, which partners can integrate with wallets, different applications, app chains, ecosystem, different blockchains, and that's very powerful. So by utilizing the security primitives that we've built up underneath the stack, means that we're in a great place to work with lots of different partners, lots of different builders, to really push the adoption side forwards for LBTC right now, but also for other tokenized assets in the future. Likewise, when it comes to the user experience of our DeFi marketplace that we have today, that's a one-stop shop for anyone to go and see all opportunities with LBTC, to really easily see what I can do on one chain versus another, see estimated returns, yield rates, and participate in a vibrant LBTC and Lombard economy. And as we build these products out more so, what are we finding is that Lombard as an organization is a movement. It's not just a company building this technology, and as part of that movement, we're encouraging obviously builders to check out our SDK to build with it, but as we open more parts of the stack up as well, it's really the ecosystem that we're building. When it comes to the centralized power of an asset issuer, we differentiate ourselves from a Circle and a Tether as well, by realizing that we are Bitcoin first. We all have values more akin to Bitcoin's founding principles, and we build in that way. So we build in an open way, in a trust minimizing way, to be able to push forth all of these products and security primitives towards what we see as an end goal. Starting with enabling liquidity, but building out more over time to enable lots of use cases around Bitcoin. So SDK, user acquisition, simplicity, ease of integration, fantastic. LBTC, primitive of Bitcoin and many DeFi applications across many ecosystems. That's also fantastic. Our consortium, our security consortium, this is 14 of the largest, most trusted institutions in crypto, all commonly aligned to power the security of Bitcoin on Lombard. This has been there from day one, and is always going to be the secure foundation of what we do. But from that, we also introduce transparency. So Jacob mentioned Lombard Ledger. That is a BFT-based blockchain in its own right. It's not a Bitcoin L2. We don't push it to retail. It serves a very specific purpose, which is an accounting database, but in a transparent way that anyone can look at any of the nodes associated with it and check out all of the operations, the upgrades that take place for the protocol as well, and really start to partake in that element of governance around the protocol too. So yeah, in short, we have built a lot, and we're seeing an explosion of demand from partners to utilize all different components of the stack, to be able to service customers that we have today, but also to service new customers for the use case, and building upon that trust and security model to enable more use cases to bridge the DeFi activities is incredibly important for us.
Love that. Thank you so much for sharing that detail, Matt. I think the detail is important, both for everybody to know how considered this is, but also how everything is already developed or in development, and that whilst we haven't packaged many of these products up and taken them to market, they do exist. And so we're already partway through this middleware section of the roadmap, which is really very cool. Two things that are on here that we haven't really spoken about all that much, but made me think about them as you were talking about the many different users that we serve. Obviously, we can serve developers with developer tools, DeFi protocols with primitives, but then there's also like capital allocators, institutions themselves. And looking at the products that we have in the distribution layer, structured products, Basis Trade Vault, I feel these can be very much for everybody, but understand as well that these products can really scale. These products can really grow, inviting institutional capital into Lombard and the space at large. So, Donna, do you want to just give us a little bit of an overview about the structured products, or at least the tokenized products that we're thinking about, and how we might bring them to market to attract or indeed work with certain institutions, and why we think that that is a killer idea?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe even before that, Charlotte, I think just building off this whole circle tether dynamic, right? These companies have been around for 10 years, right? And they kind of chewed through glass for about 5 years until the world kind of finally understood what the value of dollars on chain really looks like. And so you fast forward to now, stablecoins do more yearly volume than Visa and MasterCard. And so I think where we then get excited about using these types of examples is in a world where we're already very close with the top chains, the top protocols. We are very excited about future launches on a handful of chains and networks like a Solana, maybe a Mega ETH, a Monad down the line, where we already have the right infrastructure. And so if we can now launch this other type of asset, maybe even on a Lombard wrapper side, we now have a full suite that can kind of tackle 3 major use cases, right? Payments as well as trading and collateral. Maybe payments is a bit more down the line, and stay tuned on what that could look like as it relates to Lombard. But at the same time, right, if we can bottle all of this up into this type of SDK type of product and offering, and we're going to start to make some really exciting announcements in the very short while around who's actually getting a lot of benefit and use out of this. Different types of verticals, by the way, whether it's a wallet, a dApp, even fintechs and mining pools. This is just the full stack infrastructure going back into the overall vision of why we get so excited. Now, on the more institutional side of things, I think the reality is that, these types of offerings have typically and historically been limited to types of institutions and more accredited investors. And so again, getting back to my original point of all of this will take time. The vision is to ultimately take that type of access and enable retail to access those types of strategies. And Matt, at some point, I think it's a good segue into how we're thinking about building out the Lombard ledger itself. But ultimately, what you can expect very soon here as we finalize some decisions on the custody and the overall architecture of how do you actually work with these different types of institutions is different types of solutions where people can still maintain exposure to either wrapper or LBTC, use that as some type of collateral asset, and then leveraging a lot of different types of custodian off-exchange settlement solutions and venues, working very closely with these different trading venues, whether they're centralized exchanges or other, to then start to unlock and fully realize what on-chain Bitcoin really means, even for these institutions. If they can get even a further, even 1% return on top of what they already have access to as it relates to these types of products that are on the market. And if over time we can get the right structure to eventually offer this type of asset class to retail, I think that full vision, again, while lofty, is fully realizable, right? Where you have tokenization kind of taking front center stage of every type of protocol or project and institutions. And I think that's what we're building towards. But Matt, I think that's a really good opportunity to kind of highlight the role that Lombard Ledger plays here, where all these assets can live, talk to each other, and be composable within that construct.
Sounds good. And I think it's really interesting because when we have internal discussions about RWAs and tokenization, we've always looked at this from the angle that we want to make sure there's really strong value add within DeFi and on chains for tokenization of different strategies beyond wider acquisition. And I think that's where there's obviously slight alpha leaks on this slide as well, which we haven't discussed. But really using the security infrastructure that we've built up on Lombard Ledger means we can scale very quickly to build out different types of products as well, different types of tokenized strategies, bridging C and DeFi. Matt mentioned via off exchange settlement solutions as well is one way of being able to really bridge connectivity and have tokenized assets out on chain. But then also from a risk perspective as well, by having Lombard Ledger as the centralized place for the issuance of these assets means that we can be building an open platform with risk metrics built into that platform too. So anywhere where we work with partners to create tokenized instruments which have a more centralized component, we'll be doing that in a very mindful way where we're working with them and different risk curators as well to make sure metrics are exposed. Those could be used obviously manually for review, but also maybe in automated trading strategies on chain too. So I think there's a lot of innovation that can come on top of what we're building, and by us providing the middleware, the interconnected kind of components of the stack means that we're just going to accelerate BTC DeFi development further, and that's what we're excited by there. Just to answer one or two kind of quick questions as well. Someone was asking around how do we manage the risk of overexposure to Bitcoin volatility? For Lombard, we don't take financial risk. We have a security framework in place for BTC. There's no margin or non-one-to-one nature of what we do with LBTC as a liquid representation. That's very important to us. We want to be as close to native BTC as we can be, and really just act as this middleware enabler beyond different applications and different ecosystems, and that's very important to us. Likewise, when it comes to if others can build strategies using the Lombard stack, like absolutely. So whilst right now these are all applications which have gone through thorough dual audits for every release and have been used for that kind of core foundational accounting and security practices, they're going to be opened up more over time, and we're going to be encouraging other teams to come and build with us to build exciting new products.
Yeah, this is actually an interesting one. You could kind of think of building on LBTC before as like building on the Lombard stack, though you didn't know it at the time. And part of the reason that LBTC was such a powerful primitive was because there were so many other like flywheels built into that product. Like every new chain and DeFi protocol wanted to adopt it, like I said before, because it was like, oh, if I build with LBTC, then I get $100 million in inflows, And so I think there's a lot of things. I mean, this is probably less on the product side, more on like the BD community side, where we're like sort of creating these native flywheels where it's like, if you build on the Lombard, like I think the most beautiful thing would be, I have a novel structured product or a novel sort of Bitcoin yield vault that I want to create. I go build on Lombard because Lombard does all these other things for me. They give me the perfect tools to create a great UX. They give me direct intros to LPs, or there's like great liquidity flywheels built in such that when you launch a vault there, liquidity flows in quickly. Like everything is sort of in place so that, you can focus on just doing something narrow at the distribution layer that you're like really good at. And we sort of solve the rest for users, regardless of what you're building. I think this is the key. And this is actually like, this is maybe the most important part of like how this stack comes together, is that each layer is like symbiotic with the rest of the layers and creates this like really great platform. I mean, that's what platforms are great if they add value to the person building on top. If not, that person should just be building their own thing, Yeah,
and maybe just to echo that and then chime in with one important point here is I think this is where credible neutrality really helps us in the strongest way possible. Right. And obviously nothing, and maybe two important points on top of that, right? Nothing changes with regard to LBTC, how much we're going to continue to grow and expand it, bring it to these different chains, ecosystems, protocols. I think what we're highlighting is everything that we've built to elevate LBTC as we have will now continue to evolve in the version of net new products and offerings, all then baked into this type of middleware infrastructure component, which enables Lombard to now work directly, maybe on a more even B2B side of things, right? And so any fintech, for instance, who has some type of on-chain tokenized strategy, instead of them building this from the ground up and spending tons of time, resources, capital, where they realistically, a lot of the time don't have the expertise in-house to do it. Again, the credible neutrality here and where we sit just makes it a very easy sell. And so if we can continue to just hone in on that, and of course, launch with some great partners to, get off of zero here, I think it just completely will change the perception of everything that it is we're doing. But nothing changes on the LBTC side and how much we're going to continue to grow and scale this. It's just a better infrastructure now that we have, and it can be so well equipped into these different types of verticals. And I think this is really where I get so excited about this vision and how I kicked it off of saying this sort of opens the scope of who we can work with, form partnerships with for that long term. If the trusted sort of middleware and infrastructure powering all of this is that credibly neutral party, it's just such an easier sell, let alone than having just better products and solutions that are always forward looking and will always be upgraded and embedded within that infrastructure. It's just an amazing setup. So I could not be more excited about the vision and starting to make some announcements that really help people recognize sort of how the market is viewing everything that it is we're doing.
Yeah, that's great. And I think your point about LBTC remaining extremely core to what we're doing is a good one. It's something that a few listeners have asked us what's happening with LBTC. Well, LBTC is how we started. This is why Lombard exists. We all very, very much believe in it, and we'll continue to grow it and roll it out on new chains, very exciting chains, throughout the summer. And so it'll stay core and central to what we do, but ultimately has allowed us this platform to grow from and do much more as a team, but also for Bitcoin and the ecosystem at large, which is really exciting.
And that's where I guess, sorry, Charlotte, just to add, LBTC is in effect a foundational unit, right? It provides a baseline level of additional yield on top of which you build additional products, and that's where it's core to everything we do. And just as we've seen on the Ethereum side, like staked ETH become that kind of foundational yield-bearing asset for DeFi protocols, that's pretty much where LBTC is today and will be in a year's time as well.
I think even just on that, part of the reason why I love working at Lombard and with the team in particular is, we understand this is a very explosive vision that we have, but we are very good at staying focused at the same time. So in a world where across all of crypto, like there's so many different shiny directions you can head, we do stay very, head down focused on the most needle moving things. And we don't lose sight of sort of what brought us here, right? In terms of LBTC and all this different infrastructure that we've built along that way. I think, again, what we've recognized is we now have this full stack, as well as the Lombard ledger, that can play such a critical role in this world where everyone has that Bitcoin strategy, as well as how do we sort of move into the more crypto native aspects of things. And so we're going to stay head down focused and just continue to execute like we have. So it's just been amazing working with a team, and we've got a few folks not on the call even that just keep us very, very focused, head down, and making sure that we're progressing the things that really matter.
We can give Kev a shout out because I know who you're talking about. So shout out Kev for bringing all of these products to market, working with all of the engineers. He touches everyone in every department at Lombard and really brings these products to life. He was a real cool part in bringing the website to life, the website refresh, and the app refresh as well, which is also still undergoing another facelift. There's an app v2 in development as well, which looks really, really cool, especially in the new brand. So and Kev keeps us all moving. So shout out Kev, and thank you for everything that you did, bringing this brand to life. I want to just touch on this chart because everyone throws numbers around, and these are very big numbers that we're throwing around here, and we sort of just sped through it earlier. But Jacob, I just want you to talk about this 6 trillion figure, because we've done the math internally, but if you could explain the workings of this 6 trillion in potential can be created by Lombard, potentially, if we bring Bitcoin on chain. I just want you to talk us through the math there and what that really, really means.
Totally. So when we were first introducing Lombard, we relied heavily on this number 2 trillion. There's $2 trillion in market cap for Bitcoin. And, everybody, this is many people have talked about this as like the scale of the opportunity that we're attacking with Bitcoin. Of course, 2 trillion is a really big number. And, you're probably not going to onboard all of the Bitcoin into DeFi. So maybe that number is more like, in this 165 billion to 660 billion range. But even that is like a massive, massive opportunity, right? Like just onboarding Bitcoin as an asset into the ecosystem has the potential to create an immense amount of value. But we really feel like the thing that has been missing, we've seen elements of onboarding Bitcoin, the asset, into DeFi. But I think what we haven't seen yet is people take it to the next level. If you think about like what's happened in the Ethereum ecosystem, there has been I think a little bit over 3 times the amount of value built upon ETH, the asset. So ETH is like $330 million asset or something. $330 billion asset. And there's been about $1 trillion in value that's been created on chain on top of that. That doesn't even count all the off-chain businesses that have been built as well. This was just a little bit of an estimation. And so our thought was basically like, you look at the Bitcoin ecosystem, by far the biggest community, the biggest institution, like the only sort of broadly institutionally adopted token in the space, the primary onboarding mechanism for users into crypto, coming through Bitcoin. This entire ecosystem has just been, void of innovation since the beginning. Or I think the better way of putting it is that the innovation within the ecosystem has been dormant. Some of the most principled developers in the space, and as I sort of mentioned in my own personal flow, it's like everybody starts off as a Bitcoiner and then molds into someone who goes to the Ethereum ecosystem because they're looking to be more innovative, or they're going to the Solana ecosystem. And I think in a lot of ways, like the end game for Bitcoin DeFi is to build permissionless innovation directly on Bitcoin. One of the examples I love for this is like, if the Trump administration could have launched their meme coin on Bitcoin, they would have, but there was no way to do this. So they inevitably had to go to another ecosystem. I think that that's a very minute example in the grand scheme of things, but we have this idea in the post that like, if we are successful, our belief is that some of the next biggest innovations in all of crypto, like stuff on the level of like a Hyperliquid or a Celestia or an Eigenlayer, like totally net new innovations will come from the Bitcoin community. We would struggle to sit here and think about like what game-changing technologies outside of like the very core infrastructure, of course, that Bitcoin built have come from the ETH ecosystem. A lot of that has actually come from, has come from the Bitcoin ecosystem. Now you see all of the innovation and all of the like top minds building on other platforms with the invention of new trustless technologies like, BitVM that'll ultimately, or an OpCop that will ultimately bring native programmability to Bitcoin. I think we have this like long-term opportunity to bring all of that innovation back into the Bitcoin ecosystem in one way or another. And so that's sort of how we envision this opportunity is like, if there was, X amount of value created on ETH, imagine how much economic value we could create if we created a Bitcoin economy on top of BTC L1. So again, this is a long-term goal. Like I think this is still many, many years out, but this is where we're always sort of pushing in this direction of like bringing economic value and economic activity to Bitcoin on chain. And I will say, actually, maybe one thing to note here is I don't know what the number is, but there has been a ton of economic value created by Bitcoin already, but all of that value has been created off chain. And I actually think that like so many more people would build with Bitcoin if it was easy to build. The permissionless innovation is the killer product of this space. The fact that like developers can go spin up a fintech, like Uniswap could have been built. Maybe this is not quite true, but it's like Uniswap started off as like a hackathon project. It's like something people could have, the code was so simple. I mean, you could have wrote that in like a weekend or like a couple weeks. And now this is becoming fundamental infrastructure for the global economy. That is like insane. If you tried to do that in the traditional space, you'd spend years just getting licenses trying to distribute that throughout everything. So it's like, if you want to build a Bitcoin business right now, you have to like rebuild Coinbase and build a custodian and go get, you have to hire a massive team to go get licenses and stuff. The fact that you're able to spin up trustless infrastructure on chain, it like with the snap of a couple fingers is wild. And this is like the next stage of all of fintech, is being able to build with technology that's so good that you don't need to worry about regulation. Like that, I think is the most amazing thing that crypto has built. And being able to bring that back into the Bitcoin ecosystem creates exponential opportunity. Like this $6 trillion number is a bit of a, we're sort of extrapolating a lot to get to that. The real number is probably like 50 or 100 trillion. We just can't even really imagine how much value could be built on these chains.
And maybe to add to that, look, I have no idea what the number is or what the pie chart and the makeup of it is ultimately, but we are going to focus on everything from as far as the infrastructure that we built, assets that are issued, trading, collateral, payments. And again, taking that example on the stablecoin side, they do 25, 30 plus trillion dollars worth of volume in 1 year. And so I think the number here is important, but it's more about what does this then mean if Bitcoin is more on chain than it typically has been in the past. And the only way to do this is building out this type and set of infrastructure in this credibly neutral way, where it puts us in this position to work and support so many different types of folks across the different value chain, especially as more institutions start to funnel into this entire space. I mean, you think about on the collateral side, how much volume and size they could come in with. And if there is even that asset like an LBTC, which is yield generating and bearing by nature, it sort of entirely can reposition how they think about this type of not just value stack and infrastructure, but the asset itself. And so again, I have no idea what the number is, 6 trillion, 50 or plus, but it's a very exciting opportunity, as we know, across those 3 use cases. And maybe there are more, right, that come to mind over time. But it does seem ripe for disruption as it relates to trading, collateral, as well as payments over time. And we're going to be front and center for all of it.
All I was going to say is this is probably a pessimistic chart, surely. I mean, we're talking in dollar terms. We should redo this in BTC terms.
Exactly.
Definitely. And I just wanted to maybe turn our attention to the stream of community questions that have rolled in. I think it's actually quite a nice segue to what you were just saying there, Matt, of this being a long-term vision, perhaps a North Star to create exponential value, and all of the different ideas we might execute along the way, being somewhat fluid, but ultimately enabling innovation on BTC and allowing people to do stuff with their BTC is very much the North Star. But what you were mentioning there is, and something you mentioned earlier, was about the team's focus, and Jacob explained that we're all in on Bitcoin. One of the questions that the community has asked is, how are we going to maintain our edge? And I want everyone sort of here to maybe answer that. It could be a cultural answer of like how we operate and how we think about stuff, but how can Lombard maintain its edge as we execute against this roadmap? I'd argue that this is exactly how we maintain our edge. We're always evolving. We're always looking to grow and contribute to the ecosystem. But I'd love to hear what the rest of the team thinks there.
I think we have a maturity and balance for how we approach this and realize where the market is today and where we're hopeful it will be tomorrow. So we have to build for today. We're onboarding liquidity today, but we are also quietly at times working behind the scenes for where we want the market to be tomorrow. And a good example of this is the previous conversation. If we're doing our jobs right at Lombard, we're building an ecosystem, it's an incredible achievement if we've even enabled maybe 2 times as many people to build on Bitcoin, to be able to connect to different protocols, to bridge C and DeFi, to open up what's been quite a private market, I think, on the BTC side in the past. So yeah, even a 2x improvement on that, I think is a big achievement for us, and that's what I'm excited by.
Maybe in a slightly different vein, it's like we're 24/7, right? And this is the playbook, right? I feel so confident that this team here, working day in, day out, weekends included, we have the right folks to execute, not just from, how we've built out the actual full stack infrastructure and always, being as transparent as possible and more than most, that aside, we have the team to execute and the relationships and the network to make this a reality. And so, why I feel so confident is I know how hard this team works. We've been, having these different conversations for the last 6 months, right? Because we've always sort of had this vision from the get-go. I think as we kind of highlighted, LBTC was this perfect catalyst. And all along the way, we built out this infrastructure and maybe, 6-8 months ago, fully realized like, man, what else could this do? And this vision here is exactly that. Again, we're never going to lose focus. We're going to continue to work, not 5 days a week, but maybe 6.5, you guys tell me, but, we're going to continue to go head down. And so here's a playbook, but, man, do I feel really confident that we have the team to actually execute on it?
Yeah, you're just reminding me, Matt, that the way we keep our edge is that everybody on this call and our engineering team forced vacations for at least some point during the year. We're going to need to start implementing that to make sure we can do this for 5-6 years on end.
I think they need some time, well deserved, and Charlotte and team as well, right? In terms of, I know you're never going to sort of celebrate yourself here, but the amount of work and coordination that has gone into sort of this, I wouldn't say it's not a rebrand, it's a revamp, and just being a bit more public about what the vision was from day one, but obviously needed to show the market that we have that to execute. And Charlotte, I just know you, Kirti, the entire team have been working on this for quite some time of how do we really position this to the market in the most clear, digestible way. So yeah, just, in a world where I'm calling out Kev, who's not even on the call, very important to all you guys do.
Yeah, maybe if we can.
Right team, right product, right time. I mean, BTC right now, we're at the center of it. This is the space to be. This is the asset of our generation. We're at the start of it. It's probably the first time in crypto for me in 7, 8, almost 9 years that I feel like we're in the right space at the right time, and we're not too early. We're early, and that's why we're here to build.
Totally. Matt, I actually think you said it perfectly at the beginning that balance is the key for Lombard maintaining it at its edge, in that at every function of the business, we have executed to perfection so far. Charlotte and the marketing team have led the narratives for the entire Bitcoin DeFi space. Matt Donovan's probably onboarded more Bitcoin than anybody else in the space over the past 12 months. Product team has built the standard for Bitcoin infrastructure and security in the space, and of course the engineering team has just been nonstop shipping code left and right. I feel like when we show people that stack or like explain to people just how much we've built in a short amount of time, it always blows their mind. And I think that's just a testament to everything we had. It's like you can't have. I think when I compare us to like other projects in the space, people are too overweight one section or another. A really strong distribution company that doesn't have a strong engineering team or product team, like problem solving folks in the back end, or a really great product team who doesn't know how to distribute. We've kind of got the full package here. That's been the MO for Lombard. And I think we are just starting. I think the stack unveils 4 or 5 more opportunities at different layers besides LBTC that we are now sort of looking to repeat the exact same playbook that we used to distribute LBTC so well.
And we haven't even had, the protocol and the products out there even for a year yet. Obviously, we've been building for a long time even prior to that, but absolutely, we're just getting started here. And this vision is the first of many different types of announcements, partnerships, and things that we're really excited to share more about.
Yeah, indeed. And I'm really, really excited to share them. I think that's my favorite part of this job, is being able to share so much of the great work that the product team does, that Matt does, the partnerships these guys pull together, is to share those with the world. It brings me great joy to do that. And ultimately now I get to do it with a super funky, fresh brand, which actually matches my house keys, weirdly enough. So I don't know which came first, one before the other. Yeah, and thank you, Matt, for mentioning the brand there. We did it all in-house, actually. So it was something that we worked very closely with Jacob on, even down to like, do you like this version of bright green or this brighter version of bright green? And Jacob's involvement was great. And I think we really, really hustled our in-house designer Adam on the brand work, and then he also had to roll that out on the website and the app as well in maybe 2 months. So we do hustle and we do everything pretty much in house. That which gives me, the belief that we can continue to execute because we really do everything in house, or we work with only the best partners to bring these things to life. So that's how I know we'll be able to maintain our edge and really deliver on this ambitious but exciting roadmap.
Yeah, and maybe I'll note thanks to Charlotte and Kirthi for hanging with me throughout this process. I am just terrible at articulating design sense. It's by far, I'm sure I have a lot of weaknesses, but I know that artistic and design articulation is one of them. So this was a difficult branding exercise for me, but I'm glad we got through it. And also the benefit, of course, there are many, many benefits to having leaders across every part of the business. I think what we found was like when we were trying to take in all these ideas, it's like, man, everybody within the Lombard team has opinions and ideas and like their own vision of what Lombard was. And so honestly, I think we all felt like it took a little bit longer than we would have hoped to like bring all of that, mold it into one unified picture. And now I'm just pumped to, have this outlined, everything unified.
Yeah, 100%.
Jacob, you have no weaknesses.
Say
What'd you say?
Time,
no
Matt?
weaknesses?
No weaknesses. Trying to hype it up.
Yeah. But yeah, people are asking, where did the color come from? And it really did come from some conversations. We wanted something bright, bold, and fresh because that's what we want to encapsulate. That's how we want to move forward. Why do we include photography? Well, sort of the concept for the brand was very much thinking about Bitcoin moving and bringing Bitcoin to life ultimately. So that was, I used to work in an ad agency, so this is very like creative and conceptual, but the concept is really the brand that makes Bitcoin move. And that's why you see people moving whilst blurry, because they're either moving fast or they're moving anonymously. But we really wanted to incorporate people and life into the brand. So hopefully, as you see our photography roll out on different materials, that speaks to you. It definitely speaks to me and really brings Bitcoin and Lombard to life. So yeah, I just wanted to mention the photography aspect because it is a bit
totally
bold for a DeFi protocol to be using photography and not just line drawings.
I think Lombard's brand has this deep sense of individuality. Like even when we were first starting this and we came up with like the color green we were going to use, we're like, okay, everybody's doing blues, everybody's doing reds. So those are like out the door. What about green? And we like weren't quite sure about it. And now it's really funny to see green become like consensus, that's Lombard seeing the future first right there. And the photography thing I'm so excited about. I think this is like, the beginning of what'll be a long iteration on what that becomes. But it just feels very bold, which I think defines exactly who we are.
Exactly. We are over time. I think we've answered most questions as we've flowed through this session. And of course, the Lombard team is available at all times. As Matt says, we work 8 days a week, and you can get in touch with us on all of our DMs. Yes, Matt?
We're hiring, by the way, and it's very difficult. Not always this. Obviously, we're head down in just important times, but we are hiring. So that's a plug. Just want to get that out there, and it's not all the time. 6, 7
Matt's
days.
in his influencer era. You're now promoting. But yes, we are hiring. We're hiring BD engineering all the time. So yes, definitely DM if you're interested in joining this wonderful crew, which works hard but also takes breaks and gets to work with Jacob and Matt and myself every day, which is lovely. But yeah, any more questions, any ideas, feedback, we're open to them, and just really excited to share this with you today, and for everyone's feedback to date to be really encouraging. So thank you. And this video will be available if you want to watch back or share it with friends. And we'll see you next week for more exciting updates.
Thank you all. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.